You don't have to travel very far outside any metropolitan area to realise the dominance of the New Zealand dairy industry. Its farms now stretch the length and breadth of both islands. Lush pasture with placid cows makes for an idyllic setting. Then you have the increasing numbers of milk tankers delivering their daily loads to mega factories dotted around the country, and the economic reports regularly featuring high on the day's news, driving home the fact that it is the production of milk products for export that leads New Zealand's foreign income earnings. For most, this sounds like a pretty positive picture. But at the same time as our dairy farmers are being encouraged to lift milk production, increase herd sizes, and convert even more land for dairy farming, there is a growing sense of disquiet amongst some of our milk producers and others in the rural areas of New Zealand. On the face of it, the equation on which the success of the New Zealand dairy industry is based is a simple one. Knowledgeable pasture management produces high quality grass. Top class cows convert that to premium grade milk. But opposing many of the established conventions of today's dairy industry are some uneasy farmers and public who maintain that in the drive to lift milk production, especially by the increasing use of top dressing to promote grass growth, an important element has been lost: the consideration of the very land upon which farming is based. Maori have a word for this sort of caring. It's called Kaitiakitanga, a sense of guardianship of the present for the future, or, in another more familiar word, sustainability. Neil Armitage farms 400 hectares at Pastures in the Hawke's Bay region. After running this dairy farm for 17 years, the place looks well tended and prosperous. But there is an extra element in place here that is less apparent. Since 2006, the entire property has been successfully operated using the principles of sustainable farming, or what has now been commonly termed biological farming. A beautiful spring day has welcomed the National Association of Biological Farming to Pastures, who are holding an open day here in appreciation of Neil's biofarming efforts. It's a day for those with inquiring minds, the simply curious, and particularly for those already passionate about sustainable farming methods, like Association member Nicole Masters, who gets things rolling.
We've managed to establish a really good website that's looking at, actually there is science behind biological farming, so when someone tells you that there's nothing to support what we're seeing, there is actually an awful lot of research out there. So we've got about 250 pages of abstracts that look at why is it that we need biology, that actually biology are really important in disease suppression, animal health, how can we get nutrition into the plants, why is it that we see less weeds as a biological system progresses. So there's some really, really exciting stuff going.
Force feeding your calves, we have a cure for that problem. It's the Dairy Care cow and calf formula with the proven natural ingredients of manuka honey and aloe vera. Isaac's been using this formula from Dairy Care for his third season with outstanding results.
50 mils when I first get them, so from 1 week to 2 weeks old they get 50 mils each, mixed in with their milk. From 2 weeks on they get 5 mils each day. Originally I chose the product because I liked the fact that it was organic based.
Ray rears up to 700 calves a year and wouldn't be without the Dairy Care cow and calf formula.
3 years that I've done calves, I've used Dairy Care. My losses have been less than 1%, and Dairy Care has been a major contributor to keeping the calves healthy and free from scouring.
For a proven natural cost-effective cow and calf formula that really works, Dairy Care with manuka honey and aloe vera.
I'm John.
An informal group discussion around the issues of farming is not only a good way to break the ice, It also begins a day during which these folk will be hoping to find some answers to their concerns. So there's plenty to talk about.
Focus should be on supplying the consumer with a nutrient-dense product.
They have less metabolic problems within, whether they be sheep or beef.
So you've got to find your own goals, profitability, and certainly being happy with what you're leaving behind you.
But it's Neil Armitage and the story of his own farming journey that will play an important part in making sense of the day's events.
I left school at 15, so I didn't have any university education, didn't really do that well at school.
As a young person, the last thing you need to hear is you're good for nothing.
When it did come time to leave, one of the teachers did say, you haven't done very well academically, so you'll find life a bit of a struggle. And I basically said, well, I'll be the judge of that as time goes by. So I left school. So basically, a lot of people didn't think I had it in me to get ahead.
But in explaining the road that led to his present Hawke's Bay farm, Neil is glossing over some important aspects of his early life that would later produce profound changes to his farming activities. Although Neil was brought up in Wellington, the long summer school breaks were spent on the farm at Opape, near Apotiki. Here a young Neil found solace in the warm embrace of his Maori side of the family. There were strong influences from both his grandfather and uncle. They both won the much coveted Ahu Whenua trophy for Maori farming. But would Neil follow their lead? It was while working at his grandfather's side that Neil observed and absorbed some important traditional Maori values, relating to a special consideration for the land, an attitude that combined practical common sense with a sort of spiritual awareness.
Well, there is some spiritual aspects to it. I've mostly got a connection with the land, and I want to leave the land in a better place. Money's one thing, but I've learned it's better to empower people and teach people, and it's no good taking that knowledge with me to my grave.
As with many success stories, Neil's background is a mixture of elements, like a fierce determination.
But I joined the Farm Cadet scheme, and then instantly I did well academically there. I used to get like real high marks at it because I'd found something that really totally interested me. And then I was placed on a farm at 15 or 16, so I started to learn to farm there with a guy called Trish Hill, and yeah, I got on really well with him, and I enjoyed dairy farming even at that age, and he used to give me a lot of responsibility, even though we were milking 100 cows, 110, but obviously he thought I could do it.
Now there's an element of luck involved. Back in the late 1970s, there is still a generous government assistance available for prospective young farmers. That and parents willing to be guarantors for a hefty bank loan.
So I was quite young, at 17 and a half. So I managed to get the job, but my parents had to come to the job. And then it came time to borrow money from a lending institution. And basically they said, we're only lending you a loan because your parents have gone guarantor and we don't believe that you'll make it.
Neil's first share milking position is at Rerewhakaitu, not far from Rotorua. In 1980, this is still a young farming district, the product of post-war land settlement. While the scrub and tussock may have been replaced by pasture, it was only 20 years before, and there are still plenty of challenges to farming on the mineral-deficient volcanic soils. A generally accepted practice is the liberal application of top dressing. Rerewhakaitu, with its active, tolerant farming community, makes an ideal entry point into a life of farming. His partners are prepared to give him the lead, and there are plenty of wise old minds ready to offer advice. Neil also seeks the services of some top local farm advisors. He raises production and the farm flourishes. His parents are impressed, and life is good. 30 kilometres to the west of Rerewhakaitu, Upper Atiamuri is another comparatively young farming district, with a similar rehab settlement history, and some of the same problems. Here too, the providers of farm fertilisers are doing brisk business.
I was heavily influenced by like some Excel, LIC and all those other institutions like that, so I took on board their knowledge, which was to develop land you needed heaps of P, heaps of K and heaps of N, and to grow more grass as my trio went along they said just keep pouring the N on. So I'm guilty of doing all that. Yeah, we did have success. Success is measured in terms of increased milk production and herd numbers, and the well-being that comes from a fulfilling, happy family life. The icing on the cake is the winning of a trophy that makes the whole family proud. But it was over the 8 years on the Atiamuri property that Neil Armitage began to seriously consider that his farming success might be coming with penalties attached, a cost both the land and as a consequence the stock were paying. I noticed that we started with tubes of penicillin, Adpen 100, that little, and now 33 years later we're using tubes huge. The mastitis is pretty much, it can kill a cow within 12 hours. So along this journey I sort of knew this isn't right, this isn't right. I've always done most probably above average production wherever I've farmed, but then the vets and everyone kept telling me, oh, it's just the product of you producing at such a high level. Could never get an answer from them, but I knew deep within me, myself, there was something wrong. Through Atiamuri, you could never establish clover, keep it there. It would just disappear within 3 years, 2 to 3 years. Same thing when I came to this farm, it just disappeared. You'd plant it and then it just wouldn't survive because we were pouring on roughly 100 units of P a year for the first 3 years. 100 units of P, 120 of K, and ramping from 200 to 300 Ks of N a year. Running into all the issues, bloat and all the rest of it, infertility, the whole lot.
Looking over his Pātoka farming operation, Neil Armitage decided that now was the time to make a change. He remembered his grandfather's easy relationship with his land. He recalled conversations with some of the old-timers back in his Rerewhakaitu days, and he discovered the work of a well-known American eco-scientist, Arden Anderson, whose theories about managing soil and plant nutrition all triggered Neil's move to biological farming.
Food today is junk. It does not provide the nutrition for us to be healthy. It does not have the nutrient levels. It's loaded with pesticides.
What led me to this was my dissatisfaction with things I was seeing happening to the soil, to the pasture, to the animals, lack of ability to hold clover, always having to regrass the farm every 3 to 5 years. So I thought there was a better way, and went to the biological conference with Arden Anderson. He supplied me with a lot of answers that I'd asked. I could see them in my head, and he helped me realise that vision. And in conjunction with another friend of mine, Jim McMillan, yeah, we thought this is the way, so we embarked on our journey of biological farming. And instead of committing 50 acres or 100 acres, I just felt within myself, just do the whole farm. So currently we're doing 400 hectares, 1,000 acres.
It's an approach that has been encouraged and assisted by some like-minded people and organisations like Outgrow, who specialise in organic fertiliser treatments to improve soil quality. So far today, this group have been talking the talk of biological farming. Now it's time to walk the walk and inspect the driving force of Neil's farm, his pasture. After 6 years under a biological farming regime, the grass here looks lush and is almost completely weed-free. And the point is made that the principles of this farming style are equally applicable whether the land is easy rolling landscape like this or more difficult hill country. If grass is the driving force of pastoral farming, then the true engine room of any successful farm is the soil. And the best way to look at that is by digging a trench at least 5 feet deep.
Actually digging a hole, and I think this underpins the biological approach, is actually digging and having a look underneath and seeing what's happening. And I mean, this is a wonderful opportunity to really have a look at a soil that's still developing. One of the other things you can have a look at when you do these is have a look at clover nodules and see if your clover is actually fixing nitrogen. So we have got nitrogen fixation occurring.
So if they're pink, they're working.
So if they're pink, they're working. So if they're white, it means they've never worked. So you actually crush them in your fingers. And if they're green, it means they have been fixing nitrogen and they've just started to slow. The other thing that you can do with soil is smell it. And some old timers I know taste it, but it tastes like dirt. I'm not, yeah, so maybe it's just something you've got to practice, but have a sniff, and that smell should smell really lovely and earthy, and that is the actinomycetes, which are a bacteria that make humus. This is your humus formation, so they're a really good indicator of health. And also the actinomycetes make antibiotics, so this is a really important part of soil health, is that we've got the smell, we've got disease suppression and things happening in here. Humus is what's holding on to your water, humus is what's holding on to your nutrients, and humus is really the end point of what we're trying to do with biological farming, is get this beautiful colour happening in here.
Humus, as Nicole said, is when these plants are growing, they're photosynthesising and sending sugar out through their root system, and if you look at the trash that's around that root system, there's organic matter there that fungi and bacteria are living on. Some of their food is coming from the leaves of the plant, and they break that down. Once you can't recognise it as organic matter anymore, then it's humus.
Now can you see that, I mean, I can dig this soil with my hands, you know, and it's crumbly and it's got pretty good structure. I mean, you've got to actually break that apart and it'll stick together. So this is really good indications that we've got biology in here. There's no limit to how deep this soil can go as long as we've got air down there, you know, so it's all about that air movement. Here's really interesting. We've got a root that's going all the way down and surrounded by, that root has been surrounded by humus. Now that's actually probably a worm burrow. So what the worms have enabled the plant to do is then get those roots deeper and deeper and deeper. So the whole thing about having a soil test up here is misleading when these roots are coming all the way down. This is the secret.
It's not just the activity of healthy grassroots systems producing nutrition-rich humus. The subsoil engine room is home to some busy natural technicians, earthworms. They will be plentiful in the right conditions.
Force feeding your calves? We have a cure for that problem. It's the Dairy Care cow and calf formula with the proven natural ingredients of manuka honey and aloe vera. Isaac's been using this formula from Dairy Care for his 3rd season with outstanding results.
50 mils when I first get them, so from 1 week to 2 weeks old they get 50 mils each, mixed in with their milk. From 2 weeks on they get 5 mils each day. Originally I chose the product because I liked the fact that it was organic based.
Ray rears up to 700 calves a year and wouldn't be without the Dairy Care cow and calf formula.
3 years that I've done calves, I've used Dairy Care. My losses have been less than 1%. And Dairy Care has been a major contributor to keeping the calves healthy and free from scouring.
For a proven natural cost-effective cow and calf formula that really works, Dairy Care with manuka honey and aloe vera.
An important function of earthworm activity is also a simple one, natural drainage, especially for soils that are prone to waterlogging in winter and drought in the summer.
Yeah, well, I've seen, like I said before earlier this morning, areas where it did waterlog, it doesn't waterlog there for nowhere near as long. Yeah. And in some cases it just doesn't waterlog there at all. But that didn't take long to see that, like 12 months.
As the day's visitors get their opportunity for a close look at the subsoil structure revealed by the trench, it reinforces one of the fundamentals of biological farming. Conventional fertiliser treatments are only dealing with the surface of the land, when the real area needing attention for healthy soil lies below. It's a method which certainly provides grass with nutrients, but the plants have a shallow root structure, and there are few, if any, worms to help a deeper root system. The result is pasture that is more fragile to the stresses of farming and weather. The trench interior has revealed a rich soil layer, but after 4 years of using biological farming methods, just how good is the grass quality on Neil's farm? Using a bricks meter which measures the sugar content of the grasses, we can get a good idea.
Just break up the cell membranes a bit, so enough to be able to squeeze out a little bit of sap, drip it into the bricks meter, refractometer, and that'll give us an indication of what the soluble solids or the sugars are. This time of the day being obviously it's going to be a lot higher at the end of the day than it is going to be in the morning or mid-afternoon. So at the moment we're roughly mid-afternoon, so we'll just see where we're at as far as the figures go. We've been a clover only sample, about 14.6, so that's a good result. That's with the clover, so we'll now do a sample with the grass only. See where we're at with that. Yeah. So I want to gauge how far they're moving forward. I mean, it's once again a good result, 12.1. Typically you will find clovers about 2 points higher than the grass as far as the bricks is concerned. So that's good quality feed.
And it's the sort of quality that is found across the entire farm. Neil Armitage has no doubts that changing his farming methods has paid off. He's still a pioneer, but is becoming an influential one. There are clear signs that biological farming is starting to catch on.
It's empowered me and it's made me enjoy farming again. To see cows fed, to see the grass staying, we don't have to regrass it all the time, and surviving the natural droughts and floods better than our other neighbours.
However, Neil is hoping to spread his message more widely than just in his immediate district. He has already been getting a lot of interest from farmers around the country.
If you want to see New Zealand agriculture prosper in the next 80 to 100 years, I think we've just about got no option. This is the way forward, to look after the land so we can hand it on to the next generation.
So we're seeing exponential growth in biological farming. Probably about 4 years ago we were sitting on about 100,000 hectares, and now it would be 450,000 hectares plus of people around New Zealand that are using these management techniques, which really is about regenerating soil and how do we really look after the health of our system.
I think the biggest challenge is getting the scientists and the research stations of New Zealand to recognise that it does really make a difference. You know, we see that, and it's quite clearly, and if we can show them, do enough experiments with them, and I think that's going to happen, I see in the future. We're getting quite excited about that, and they get on board, then we can change New Zealand food, which will change the world.
This biological farming, even though I really don't know anything particularly about it, it just feels right for the future, and I'm all about my children's children. I want them to inherit a better world, and that's my passion, that people need the knowledge, regain the traditional skills to make a better planet for our children.
Even though Neil has to be a hard taskmaster to run an efficient business, he also holds a warm regard for those around him, which he attributes to his Maori side.
Currently I'm employing Malaysians and Filipinos, and I've been able to empower them. I've been really happy with the job that they do, but I've got to thinking in recent times, why not empower our own people, the Maori? It would be nice to empower our people because we've actually owned a lot of land still in this country in New Zealand.
Nellie joined Neil's team through a farm training scheme. After a slow start, she has excelled and has a dream not too dissimilar to the young Neil Armitage.
Well, my dad worked on one when I was a baby, and he took me in to milk some cows at the age of 2. That's why I like doing what I do. I like to get a full-time job as a dairy farmer to make my dad proud.
Everything's going all right?
Yep.
Righto.
For Neil Armitage, those common sense basics of biological farming haven't just made a difference to his property. There's been another important spin-off, his personal well-being.